Hello, everybody. This is Rey Reynolds. I'm running for the 49th District Senate seat, and I have the privilege right now to talk to Maia Espinoza. She is running for the Superintendent of Education for the state of Washington, a very, very important position. Maia, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Ray. It's my pleasure.
This is one of the most outstanding things. I'm so excited about this conversation we're going to be having, where we'll be talking about education. We'll be talking about what the status of our education is, as well as how that affects a lot of our students of color, our students that are perhaps of disabilities. All of these things are going to be affecting our education, and I'm just thankful, Maia, that you are here to give us a perspective on some of those things and your opinion on how you're going to make some wonderful changes, or even maybe include some things and maybe make something a whole lot better. I'm excited for that. Just a little bit of understanding of where I've been. I used to be a school resource officer for 15 years. And so I got very, very close to a lot of what was going on in education and have some different ideas as to what were going on. But I'm certainly excited about what you got going on. Do you have any maybe opening comments you'd like to make there, Maia?
Well, I'd just like to say thank you for having me on today. My name is Maia Espinoza, running for Superintendent of Public Instruction. It's, I think, the longest title they could possibly come up with for this job. But yeah, it's the manager of public schools in Washington. But we know that even private schools and charter schools especially, follow the state standards. So what we do in this office is very, very important. And this office is such an important one, even though it's so far down ballot for a statewide office that it typically only receives about a third of the votes that the gubernatorial race does. So I really appreciate any opportunity to talk about this role because I don't think it gets enough attention as it is. And I'm super excited to be campaigning for it because I think it's an important issue. And
Absolutely.
by God, we have such a critical time right now to do something different. So I'm excited to kind of talk with you about what some of your ideas might be, based on your experiences.
Outstanding. I'm excited about it. I've got a few, and I'm definitely going to share it. Some of the things, just kind of a primer. I'm very concerned about about letting what's called restorative justice within the schools. We were having a lot of that issues. How are we going to hold children accountable? Also, are we going to be where are we at as far as our athletics program and utilizing things that are like our music programs and enhancing those? I'm very excited about that. Those are the things, kind of questions I'd like to get into, maybe some discussion with you there, Maia, so we can kind of round it out. Also, I wanted to maybe even talk about a little bit about budgeting, because that's going to be a big part of what you do, and some of the questions related to budgeting, and maybe even finally probably talking about the comprehensive sex education bill that was passed.
Yeah.
And what are your opinions on it, and how we can work within it or work without it, depending on how you feel it. You mind if I ask you a couple questions right off the bat?
Sure. Let's get into it.
Nice. Okay. How can we, in Washington, how can we ensure that Washington students have access to like programs and resources like I'm talking about that they need to be successful beyond high school? The reason I asked that is I had a kid that was, he was just a brilliant young man. However, he did horrible in school as far as the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic. He was just doing terrible. But once he got him into the skills section where he was working with his hands, all of this came second nature to him. And then all of a sudden, once he had that, he had a whole bunch of other things he could do. He became extremely proficient in math. He became proficient in writing. And he now, believe it or not, just 3 years out of school, has his own business.
Wow.
To show that he has an ability. So I guess the question again is, how can we ensure that Washington students have access to programs and resources that they need to be successful beyond high school and even prepping to go to college or some other program?
Exactly. Well, I think you framed the question just right. There is a beyond school, and that story that you shared is unfortunately not all that uncommon. I mean, some of the most successful and bright entrepreneurs that we have in this country struggled in public
Yes.
school. They struggled in school. And at the time, you know, if you ask any of these guys, they didn't feel like it was because they were meant for something different or that they had this extra potential. In a lot of the cases, these kids feel like failures. Um,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
This is, I think, exactly the premise of my campaign, which is to reimagine education. If
I
we're
like that.
honest about our school system, it was set up in the industrial era for a factory model. And a factory only works if you have, you know, identical inputs and you put them through this system and then you get identical outputs. That's not human beings at all. And it certainly
That's
isn't
right.
reflective of our kids today. These kids are asking why. They want to know why this is relevant to their life now and how they're going to use this as soon as they're out of this place. So I think we really need to take a holistic look at our school system. And what a great time, again, to be doing it right now, where schools have been shut down because of COVID. All
Right.
parents are having to really critically look at their kids' education and be involved if their kids are getting any kind of education right now. So we have this pivotal moment to actually be able to redefine that education system.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for that. Everything's a blessing in disguise, I think. And it's, you know, what you make of it.
Hmm.
But so as far as the resources and programs that some of these kids need, there are a number of programs that schools have been trying. I'm a product of Running Start myself, which
Yes.
was a career college, you know, in high school. And so this isn't for every kid, not every kid, you know, it's not even especially for those that are doing well necessarily. For me, it was very much the case of, you know, I kind of want to get out. I want to start working. You know, I get it. Let's get the move on. And so having some career college while I was doing high school classes not
Hmm.
only allowed me to get my associate's degree and interact with more adults who were working and kind of, you know, for me, it was exactly what I needed. And again, I'm not saying that it's one program fits all, but it is additional programs, additional options that allow kids to be able to define their own path and test those out as they go
Yes.
along. You know, I was actually in Berlin this last summer looking at their education model. And one of the things they are known for, of course, in Germany, is auto. And so what they do for their kids is they start them in career tech from middle school. And that was the case when I was in middle school. I did wood shop, I did welding, I did these little,
Yes.
you know, just for a quarter at a time kind of thing. You get your hands into it. But, you know, maybe a kid that's struggling in math now can see and apply these measurements are important and fractions are really important. And I
Yes.
get fractions when I can see that I'm slicing, you know. Um,
Mhm.
but so in Berlin, these kids are actually, they're earning credit. They're doing some of this stuff throughout the summer. And in some cases, they're also getting paid for the work.
Oh,
How cool would that be? I know
perfect.
my daughter's, you know, itching to start making some money.
Yes.
But so these programs allow the kids to kind of test what they want to know. I talked to some of these students. There's one in a chemical engineering lab. These are like 15-year-old kids in a
Hmm.
chemical engineering lab, you know,
You do
mixing
it.
compounds and creating this stuff. And I'm asking them like, you know, why did you choose chemical engineering as something? And this girl told me, you know, I watched Grey's Anatomy. And I thought it was so cool that I wanted to kind of test out the medical field and chemistry. And so I thought this is so cool that kids can actually get their hands in there. It didn't look like school, but these kids
Yes.
were learning so much and they felt so empowered to do it. And in some cases, we're even getting paid for it. So I think we really need programs like that and more choice in education. And if we give it to the kids, they do become accountable for their choices and they take ownership of that learning. And I think that's exactly what we need right now.
Outstanding. That's
What do you
exact, Maya. I
think?
think that's exactly what I was thinking. It kind of leads into another question because many, as you just said so eloquently, these kids, there are so different, many different types of kids and different styles of learning that these kids, we need to address that. For you, it was being able to go to Running Start, and some of the kids that I was thinking, what kind of programs, for example, if this at the school the kid can get credit, like you're saying that model in Berlin, where the kid can get modeled, where you can get the equipment that he needs and actually be like an intern at
Yeah,
some facility. And if that's the model you're describing in
exactly.
Germany, And that's the kid goes there, he works, he or she works, and they learn the technical things, and then how, like just like you said, that they can apply that stuff to math and science and reading. Now they've got excitement, and there's a catalyst for them. And
Yeah.
that's why, and so I was hoping we can increase programs where kids can actually go to work, get credit, and get paid, and then
Yeah.
have it, and then all of that come together into a really good, solid learning environment, which would probably include, the internet, or including different types of learning.
Absolutely. I mean, it's fantastic for the kid. It's good for their, schooling, their potential income. But think about industry
Yeah,
as well. I mean, here, even in Washington State, we've got, all of these tech jobs needing to be filled, and we don't have the talent to do it. Not even within the US. We've got to outsource talent for jobs that are right here in our
yeah,
backyard. So it does help by sending those kids to some of these places to intern, like you're saying. And sometimes it's a whole, kind of group of kids so they're all kind of learning together. They feel comfortable in that environment. They're supervised. But it of course gives a pipeline to those
that's right.
businesses for kids that are ready and actually learning the things that they need to know for this job. We know that industry spends billions a year remediating kids or now adults coming into entry level jobs. They've got to
Mhm.
teach them the basics. So our schools are not doing that. And we can do all these programs. We need to add this curriculum. We need to add this. If we just add this component of internship, which really doesn't take recreating the wheel, we can make a big difference.
I think that is an incredible idea, Maya. I think that you're right on the right track,
Thank
and
you.
because that is wow. But and it kind of leads to another question, because as you know, I'm running for the 49th district Senate seat,
Yep.
and I believe we could make a tremendous difference in in our state legislature. But can you maybe you can address an issue of how can the legislature, as me, once I'm elected in the Senate, how can I help you? I know that how can we play a role in ensuring that students in poverty and students of color and students with disabilities are served within the education system with the models that you're talking about now?
Totally. And we know again that there are existing models that work. There's actually a program here in my neighborhood called the Palmer Scholar. And what it
Oh,
does is it takes students of color that aren't even necessarily, high grade point average kids. Typically, I think their parents have not attended college. So they're categorized as low propensity to go to college,
oh
these
my
kids.
goodness. Hmm.
And what this scholarship does is identifies these students of color that say, yeah, I'd be willing to go to college. I just need a little bit of help. And so it provides a full ride scholarship, partners them with a mentor, and
Excellent.
kids have a 70% graduation rate, which is
70%.
70%. If you compare that to the general population, it's like, 20%, if that
Yeah.
that people are graduating from college. So these kids are having tremendous success with this program. These are the type of programs that we need to do, and they work because of the model that they use. I think it's the
Mhm.
mentorship piece. It's so
Yes.
important, providing them that full ride, but having someone along the way telling them, no, you can do it. And think about, you can already imagine the number of obstacles that these kids go through.
Huge.
I
Huge.
mean, I myself became a single mom in college, and I was kind of like, well, that's it for me. you know now I'm a mom, right? And so I'm going to drop out. And I had moms in my community say,
Yes.
no, you
No.
need to keep going. You got 1 year left. You can do it. The baby will sleep. You'll study. You can do it. And I really could not see that otherwise without somebody telling me you can do it. So, I finished college. These kids are finishing at a tremendous success rate. We can do programs like this. If we can take some of the school funding and focus on, we like to do kind of these bandage approaches, I think, to we'll patch a little bit here, we'll put that there. It's not working, and we know it's not
It's not.
working. If it was
Mhm.
working, the money that we would put in would result in a benefit or an improved
I
outcome,
agree.
and it does not. time and time again, year after year, decade after decade, even generation after generation.
Got
So
it.
we know it's not funding, um, it, but it is, I think, how we use the resources we have. We just, fully funded education according to the governor by funding McCleary, satisfying that court decision. So we've
Hmm.
got all of this new money in education, but we really haven't seen anything different. We haven't seen, I've got kids in grade school and in middle school. I haven't noticed a difference.
Nope.
I, I'm told the teachers are getting paid more, which is great. My teacher friends, she got a new haircut, a new set of glasses. I'm happy for you. But I don't think that we've doubled our education services commensurate with the doubling in education dollars.
You're
So
here.
if we
Hmm.
do something different with those dollars that focus in on what works and what results in improved outcomes. That is, I think, the most important. Now, in response to how can you help as a legislator? The office of the superintendent is a little bit, well, almost entirely bound by state law.
Hmm.
They work also with the State Board of Education, of course, for standards and curriculum, but it really is the legislature that is defining the state law that this office will have to work within.
Hmm.
So budgeting, of course, was an important thing, making sure that we got funds for public education. And this office, is advocating for those funds. Well, when you're advocating for funds, you want to know how those funds are going to be used.
That's right.
So I
That's
think
right.
we can work together in that way by building a consensus on how to gather support for different initiatives, whether it be funding, whether it be a change in law that would affect education in other ways. We do have to work with the legislature entirely. So, I've actually worked with the legislature on both sides. I worked for the Commission on Hispanic Affairs, and I
Hmm.
helped pass collaborative legislation on a bipartisan basis, if
That's
you
what we're
can
looking for.
believe it.
That's right.
We have to do it. And especially in this state, we have to work with our friends across the aisle. And it's about building those bridges and about identifying the areas that we align that allow us to move forward on good ideas. So I'm not afraid to do that. I know you'll be an ally for me,
Yes, I
but
will.
I'll be an ally for you, and I'll help, I think, make those bridges to the other side so that we can get people across the finish line, get enough votes to support these good ideas. But so you'll really be able to help in that way.
That is outstanding, Maya. And I think that is exactly the right way to proceed. Because as a potential legislator, I want to make sure that we have those programs and that we look at the outcomes. Well, many times I've seen, like you said, all the money going into different programs, and you say, okay, we have a lot of incoming money going in there, but what are the outcomes? How many children of color are graduating? Have we increased it? Have we lowered the amount of kids that are getting in trouble? And then maybe going into the prison system. We
Right.
don't want that. We want to have we done that? And I agree with you. I haven't seen it. In the 15
Hmm.
years that I've been doing school resource officer, I wasn't seeing a lot of that. I was still seeing a very low graduation rate on some of our students of color, some
Yep.
of our kids with disabilities. Again, low graduation rates. We can do better. And like you said, with this awesome Palmer scholarship that you're talking about,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. 70% graduation is just, that's unheard of. It
It's
reminds me
totally.
of some of the charter school value things that have been going on in areas where you have kids that are in the same school, one in the charter program and one not in the charter program, and those kids in the charter program are just excelling. It's
Yeah.
it. I was shocked with seeing that, and I was in an inner city of Chicago. Some of the
Mhm.
programs, amazing. But you brought up a very interesting point about us in the legislature. What about the budgets? I mean, if because right now we've got a big influx of money that went into the education system. But
Yep.
what happens on a downturn, like probably because of this COVID issue,
Hmm.
and there's going to be budget cuts there. Let's pray that there aren't, but
Right.
say there are budget cuts there, Maya.
Yep.
And what do you believe is the most important to keep in the budget when it comes to education funding?
Well, nobody wants to slash education funding, but oftentimes that is one of the first things that gets cut in an economic downturn. I understand that with the McCleary decision, after funding it, my understanding is that these funds cannot be cut as a
Hmm.
result of economic or as a result of not having enough money in the budget. So my
Wow.
understanding is that that money cannot be touched as it is. Now,
Okay.
if we were to get creative and there is a way to slash those funds, and that does happen, I would be again advocating for the things that are working. Now, I really don't know, how much fat there is to trim in education,
Probably
but
not
of
much.
course that typically means that you're doing layoffs. And I know that school districts now are doing layoffs because they overpromised when McCleary was funded. They funded, salaries today that they couldn't pay tomorrow. And so we're seeing some of those slashing already occur. We're seeing it kind of blamed on the COVID-19 and how, there's expected budgetary shortfalls. But my understanding is that the budget will stay the same.
Hmm.
Um, I think, again, if we were to do something, my impression, I'm not an
Yeah,
administrator,
I
but
understand.
my impression is that there is way too much money spent on administration and not enough of that money goes into the classroom. It's something like 40% of
My
education
goodness.
are actually in the classroom. So 60% of our dollars are going to people that make, over $100,000 a year, but don't set foot in a classroom. Maybe they had in the past, but that's not what they're doing now. So I would critically look at those administration expenses. I know that even the office of the superintendent is, over 400 people. I'm told as many as 1,000 with contractors. And other states don't even have a department like this. They have one
Wow.
appointed person that manages kind of the school districts. We have a whole agency for public education in our state. And we're spending upwards of $16,000 per student per year when we know private schools cost a fraction of that. So we know that there is that somehow the money is not adding up, and I really don't want to point fingers without
I
getting
understand
into
that. I
let's look
understand.
at what those are. But that to me is a scary ratio, that 60%
Very.
of your dollars are going outside of the classroom. I absolutely believe the money should follow the student wherever they go, whatever they decide to do. And in some cases, if we are able to slash some of these administrative maybe positions, for example, those would be the ones I'd be okay cutting before teachers, of course. But can we convert some of those monies into some of these scholarships? Wouldn't
Yes,
that be great for some of
that's
these?
good.
And if it's working, then our outcomes will show that this is a proven practice. And let's, just like any other business, look and see what's working, grow the things that are returning on our investment, and shrink the ones that aren't. That would be
Out,
my approach.
that is an absolutely outstanding approach, and actually it makes much more sense for us to see to start looking at the top heaviness of bureaucracy. There's an expression, the bureaucracy is expanding to accomplish the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. And that is that's unfortunately what has been happening. And we're
Yeah.
seeing such a bloated administration and
Mhm.
not where it needs to be. The focus into the classroom, focusing into the student, focusing into getting them where they need to be. That's the goal. And if we're doing anything other than that and coming up with all these great ideas but no tangible evidence,
Yeah,
I agree with you. That's the area that needs to be cut.
I agree.
Um, I have just one more question for you, and then I think we're gonna probably wrap it up. But I really appreciate you doing this, and you've got me so excited about this your candidacy, because these are exactly the things that we were not seeing.
Mhm.
Um, some of the things that we had that came up, which is disturbing to me and to a lot of people within the 49th, is this issue of the comprehensive sex education bill that was
Yep.
passed. I had the misfortune, is that the word I want to use? The opportunity to view some of the things that are going to be taught to the children.
Mm.
And I don't want to bias you or anything, but I'll tell you right up front, I was shocked. I, I did not know that that we would do something like that. So I was wondering if you could maybe make some comments there and we could maybe discuss some of the issues that are related to that comprehensive sex bill and how do you see it and
Yeah.
relating to our children?
I'm so glad you asked about it because that is actually the tipping point for me. That was the moment that I decided to jump into this race. Was at 2 a.m. when the legislature passed this law, or passed this bill to become law, and I was just as disturbed as you. You know, as I mentioned, I've got kids in school, and
Yes.
in looking at some of this curriculum, I was so distraught that this was being taught, but more so that the parents were being ignored. Thousands of parents came out, you know, from all corners of the state, on
Yes.
their own time, you know, took time off work or away from their families to come protest this bill of any other bill in the legislature that year's, or as I'm told from other legislators in recent memory.
Yes.
There were so many parents that came out, teachers included, other community members, kids themselves in schools saying, please don't do this. And the numbers I heard were 5,000 to 5. You'd have
Wow.
emails from two legislators to the tune of 5,000 saying, please don't do this. Please stop this from happening. And you had 5 supporting it, saying, please support this bill. I just think they were completely ignored. And we know that this office that I'm running for, the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, this was an agency request bill by this individual. So an agency
Wow.
request bill, if you don't already know, and maybe we'll just educate the audience, is,
Please do.
yeah, it's a bill that essentially any government agency head can say, you know, this piece of legislation change is important to our administration to continue functioning or to function better. So typically they really are taken, you know, with trust from the legislature. Okay, this is the expert from this department. We should hear out and listen to, you know, what their priorities are this year. Well, in this case, the Office of the Superintendent said, we need a statewide mandatory comprehensive sexual education
Mandated.
program.
Wow.
Mandatory in the sense that every single school district has to provide comprehensive sexual education. Prior to that, districts could provide even this curriculum that they're talking about now, but it would be up to those local school districts. This new law, proposed law, said every single district must provide it. I just found that an incredible overstep by
Oh my
this
goodness.
administration. And for this to be the priority, for this to be an agency request bill, and I was completely outraged as a parent. Of course, you know, if my school district was offering curriculum like this, I would take it to the school district and let them know how I felt. But this was a statewide approach. And
Mhm.
what really floors me is that this individual, when campaigning 4 years ago for this office, said he would respect local control. He, you know, believes in community input. But even their office put out a survey to the community. Do you think we should provide statewide comprehensive sex ed? And 58% of respondents said no. And they continue
Wow.
to move forward. This poll is still posted on OSPI's website. 58% said no. Those numbers are way out of proportion if you look at who actually showed up to testify against this. But the legislature and these politicians on party lines said, we know what's best for you. Even though all of us are from the West Side, we know what's best for all of Washington.
Mhm.
And this is our priority. We are going to make this happen. I was completely appalled. They passed it in the dead of night. So that was the moment that I decided to jump into this race for all of those reasons, let alone the completely disturbing elements of the curriculum itself, the
Mhm.
process by which this was passed, and the way that this supersedes local control, which is essential to our public education system, was completely outrageous. I think parents need to be listened to. I think our communities know what's best for our
That's
community.
right.
And we need to be left to make those decisions. And something as sensitive as this should absolutely be left to these districts. We don't do this for any other subject. But this administrator thought this was the priority. And I have no choice but to believe that these are special interest groups that are weighing in on these decisions being made. It's just completely outrageous. So I completely disagreed with the bill. Of course, there's a referendum that's due here very
Yeah.
soon. This
Hmm.
will simply put this option to the people. It doesn't
Yes.
even repeal the bill, it puts it on the ballot. So completely advocating that people need to sign the petition, get it on the ballot, make it, make your choice known for yourself. And
And
that's,
what? No, I
oh,
totally agree with you, Maya. And I think you made a you alluded to it and hit it. This is not. It should not for it to be a partisan issue.
yeah,
It should never have been a partisan issue. It is
you
a
got it.
parent issue, and we
Yeah.
don't. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or group. We are raising our children, and
Mhm.
our children. It needs to be what we decided for what is best for our children, and to have this mandated statewide based on something that is coming out of Seattle. That to me, that is also one of the reasons that I decided to run is
I'm
because of
so
what
glad.
it seems to be a mandate that is coming out of one place and one place only. And it's not taking into consideration what's going on here in the 49th. It's not taking into consideration what's going on in areas that are very, very important to this district. And how can we make statements like this, what's going on, what's good in this one district, when we look over there to the east side, and that does not necessarily apply. It again goes back to what is good for the child.
Right.
And I worry that this comprehensive sex bill is just a form of grooming.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I have those worries as a parent. I've got a young son and a daughter in middle school. I'm completely terrified that if a
Yes,
curriculum like this is being taught in the classroom, let alone if I can opt my daughter out of those specific courses, we know that this curriculum is meant to be integrated across subjects. And we know that if you expose this to the kids at large, my daughter's going to find out about this one way or another. You're
that's
changing
right.
the society. You're changing the way that these kids feel and the way that they think. And I think, these parents aren't far off when they say that this curriculum is sexualizing our children,
Absolutely.
educating them. I mean, the type of things they talk about in the bill that it's got to be age appropriate, but even within the same grade, when you say age appropriate, you mean grade appropriate. Within the same grade, we have kids that are different ages slightly,
Absolutely. Hmm.
but developmentally, of course, every kid is going to be so different. And this mandatory curriculum starts in kindergarten. There's no way that I'm terrified as a parent. And we know that, in combination with the COVID and schools being closed, we know that about 60% of parents are not planning to send their kids back to school to the traditional schools next fall. I think that is incredible. And I think more and more parents, when I post about stuff like this, they're saying it's not just because of COVID that we're not sending our kids back. I think parents are really waking up to what's going on in our schools because
Hmm.
of this bill. So
Yes.
again, everything's an opportunity. I think this was, as terrible as this is, I think it's really waking up parents, and we've got a real opportunity to change what's going on in our state, because these do not reflect the values of communities across Washington, as you said.
That's exactly right, Maya. And I can't. You've definitely said it just like I believe it is. As a parent, I've raised 6 children. Um, four four have gone into the military, and they learn what their part is, and what their relationship is with each other. We went about their sexual decisions that they were going to be making. We talked about sex as they were going through, as a family, the parents bringing this thing up, and then we were able to decide when was it appropriate for each student. Of my 6 children, each was totally different as to how we would address this whole issue of sex, from my 5 boys to my single daughter and my adopted daughter. It is important that we understand that each one is different. And this program, this seems to me that it almost fills all of the criteria for a grooming thing for our children. And it shocks me that we're allowing this. And I want to thank you for saying we definitely need to get this on the ballot so that the parents, so that the people can decide what
Mm-hmm.
they would like to do and how they want this to be taught, not mandated by a bureaucracy that I believe is inflated, and it needs to be examined, I should say. So that is an outstanding thing, and I really want to appreciate you for making those comments. That was all the questions I have for you, and I want to tell you thank you so much, Maya. You have been a wealth of information, and I know that our viewers are going to be looking at this and having a better understanding of what's going on. also the passion with which you speak is um, gives us the urgency that we need to understand that we need to do something about this. And it certainly hit me hard enough, especially when you told me about the statewide approach that it came out, that it was introduced by an administrator. I
Mhm.
I did not even know that. That was shocking. So again, thank you so much for this. I've had an incredible time with talking with you, and I sure look forward to being involved in your campaign in any way I can, and looking forward to and when I become senator, I'd be very much interested in what ideas you have on how we can improve, and as it seems like already we agree on most of it, how we can improve it, not just for conservative values and all of that, but also for values in general for what education should be. And I just want to thank you, Maya.
Well, thank you, Senator Reynolds. It was really my privilege to be on with you today. I think as conservatives of color, we have a unique opportunity and job to make sure that the progress that we're bringing to our state has the same values that I think we all share.
That's
There's
right.
so much, divisiveness in politics right now, and I'm so thankful for people like you that are stepping up and saying, you know what, we got to be that change we want to see. So thank you for doing it. Thank you for running, and thanks for having me on today. It was totally my privilege.
Thank you, Maya. I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
All right, let's do it again.
I'll see you later.
Bye.